Craig freaking Siegel, welcome to the show.
Oh my goodness, this is unbelievable. Literally no place in the world I'd rather be than right here with you. We were just catching up. Let's have some fun. Let's get nuts.
I know. I'm so excited. So I got to kick this off. I did an Instagram story this morning, but I had gone onto your page, as I do before I interview people, and I start to stalk, like, is there something specific I want to pull out? And I saw that you had a podcast highlight cover. And so I clicked it just purely out of curiosity to see if, what was going on with your podcast. And the first story that you have up is the interview you did with me 125 weeks ago on your podcast.
Come on.
I swear,
First one?
125 weeks ago. Isn't that crazy?
No coincidence there.
I
125
know.
weeks ago. So that's over 2 years ago.
Yeah. It was like right when you had started it, I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Actually, I remember. Yeah.
Crazy. All right. So give our audience just a quick rundown because you have just absolutely exploded and we can go so many directions for this. But basically, 13 years on Wall Street, huge jump, basically burned the boats, took this leap into entrepreneurship, and now have the biggest brand. You're literally everywhere. You're speaking on the biggest stages. If someone goes to your Instagram page for just 2 seconds, there is not a face on your page that they wouldn't already know. I mean, whether it's Jen Gottlieb, Gabby Bernstein, Ed Milet, like you have literally interviewed and worked with the biggest names in so many industries. So just take us back real quick, because you and I first connected, I think it was right during the beginning of the pandemic or right before it in New York City, and you were a Wall Street dude.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot's changed since then. It's crazy because I don't often, and I need to be better at this, is take a minute to just kind of, assess and take a look at the journey from the outside because I'm so in it right now.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm working on. But as you attested to, I spent 13 years on Wall Street prior to the pandemic, prior to me reinventing myself. And at that season of life, I was making some money. I was making good money.
Sure.
But as it turns out, there's a lot more to success than just making money. And I wasn't exactly putting a dent in the universe. A few things happened at once a few years back, right before the pandemic. I just got out of a toxic relationship, which is never fun. My best friend, my dad, had just got diagnosed with cancer, still battling. And even though I had my own business and that was great, wasn't exactly lighting my soul on fire. And I found myself kind of depressed about the past, anxious about the future. I was anywhere but the present. And I started drinking a little bit more than I'd like to admit, but I didn't stay there long. All of a sudden, I started running. And this is pivotal because a few years back, you couldn't pay me to run. Now I'm literally paying to run marathons. We just ran New York City Marathon a couple days ago. And that whole journey was so beautiful. I'm so romantic and emotional about running because, number one, it gave me purpose at a time when I desperately needed something. But probably most important, it showed me that I could be successful at something that I didn't necessarily have experience in. And then fast forward the pandemic. I mean, obviously a global awakening, but for me personally, I looked at this as an historic opportunity to just reassess. If not now, then when? And literally I looked around and I saw a lot of that Tiger King show and people drinking a bottle of wine a day and not being judgmental. I just said, it's not going to be me. Yeah. I'm going to make the most of this time. And for the first time in my life, really, I got quiet because it was kind of a forced pivot for me, if I'm being honest. And I blocked out the noise, the interference, all the BS, and I just connected and put myself in a higher frequency. And I started drawing upon divine inspiration. And I started getting these downloads. And it was like, of course, I'd been obsessed with personal development for 15 years. I mean, Kabbalah, NLP, law of attraction, you name it, I would study it, all of it, journal. And then I'm like, you know what?
And just in your free time, because it had nothing to do with your career, right?
Well, it was my free time, but I also utilized it to be a better human being, like how to, build relationships, gain confidence and so forth. So as a result, it translated to business and running and so forth. And so when I was thinking about this, like, all right, this is what I love. I'm like, what am I good at? Everybody's good at something. And humbly, I could communicate pretty effectively. I'll never forget that this was right in the beginning of the pandemic. Next day in a run, it came to me. I thought of my CLS brand and I put together a vision because I think there's a big difference between a dream and a vision. A lot of people have dreams. Sadly, most people don't attack them. And so I wanted to be very intentional. And so I thought of a 10-lane highway with each lane representing a different way to make an impact, but also do some business. So speaking, coaching, podcast, book deal, shows, TED Talk, all the things.
Yeah.
And then reverse engineer. I'm like, all right, what's step one? And then I said, let's build a personal brand. And I had nothing going on at the time. I mean, I had maybe 300 Instagram followers. I'm an introvert. I had no social presence, nothing.
No.
I promise you. Yeah.
No, an
But
introvert, you?
no, that surprises people. Yeah.
You're like the biggest social connector and networker that I know.
I know, but I had to take some uncomfortable action for that.
Okay.
And yeah, now I'm very comfortable doing stuff like that, but like and totally off topic. But in regards to introvert, like for me, I replenish in solitude. Like if I'm at an event and I'm going nuts all day, like I'll actually hide in the bathroom for 5 minutes just to kind of
Mm,
recharge my batteries and so forth. And so I put together this strategy, and then I had that moment. Can I do this? Like people call it imposter syndrome. I don't really like the word syndrome. I don't want to give it power. But for me, like the biggest cost of all was the cost of inaction, the
right.
COI, let's call it. For me, I would actually rather have died than chosen to go back and be miserable because, quite frankly, I wasn't even alive. Definitely
Mm,
wasn't aligned. And so I leaned in, and that fear of stepping into the unknown quickly transformed into excitement. And for the first time in my life, I was in alignment. And then over the last 3.5 years, the brand exploded. It wasn't only the brand, a life reinvention. We got
yeah.
engaged, puppy, who I'm hoping you won't hear during this interview, all the things.
Oh, we invite all puppies, so it's fine if we get some barks
Puppy
or cries.
friendly? Okay. Yeah.
We're good with puppies.
Yeah.
So, first thing you did, you're like, I'm going to build a brand. At that point, had you been reading business books or were you like talking to people asking where to start? Because I feel like most people don't focus on building the brand first. In fact, so many of our clients never focus on building the brand. They focus more on making money. And so it's like, okay, what's the first offer I'm going to put out? How am I going to make money? Versus you were like, let me build a brand. Let me build brand awareness. Let me build, kind of put a flag in the sand and say, like, this is who I am and this is what I stand for. And this is my mission and what you can expect when you land here. Did someone tell you to do that? Or was that an intuitive, that's where it feels best to start?
Yeah, that was intuitive. And it's really interesting that you say that because when people, a lot of people come to me for coaching all the time, like, I want to do what, you've done. I'm like, but do you want to do what I did? And a lot of people are in it to make money. And I don't want to frown upon that because everybody's motivated by different things. But
Yeah.
you and I, we're motivated by impact and contribution. And when you do that really well, the money's just a byproduct. So my thought process was, it doesn't matter how good I might be able to become with all this personal development stuff and helping people and removing limiting beliefs. If there's nobody there to consume it, I got nothing. So for me, strategically speaking, I need to build a brand so I could have some sort of community or audience and awareness so that when I did get really good, there was people there to actually apply it and so forth.
Yeah. What was the time gap between you really starting to put content out on social media and then you actually making money or people reaching out and saying, hey, I want to work with you, or what do you have for me?
Yeah. So you just brought me back to a conversation we had on my podcast. This is awesome. So I started putting out content. That was all I cared about for the first 2.5, 3 months. I just wanted to add value. That was it.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, like, I would stay up sometimes till 2, 3 in the morning in the pandemic, responding back to every single person that was gracious enough to leave a comment on a piece of content because I was just so grateful. And that was all I cared about at that time. But as I started to get momentum and I was building a Facebook group and I was nurturing the community and I was adding value and people were starting to feel it. And I started to tease that something was coming, like creating that Hollywood hype, as I know you used to love to say it
Yeah.
too. And I was teasing it and I was hyping it. And then I announced that I was going to open my doors for some one-on-one coaching. It was to take on a certain amount of clients, whatever the case may be. People who are interested, you can inquire, and that's really it. Let's go from there. And so just to be clear, because I think this is good for the listeners, for the first 2.5, 3 months, I just wanted to add value. That was it. And then once I gave people a reason to actually give a shit, then I felt like it would be a good time to start offering something. That way
Yeah.
you never hear crickets when you launch something. And then I did, and I'll never forget, 25 people signed up. I would never, ever suggest that to everybody. Emotionally, it was draining, but I was super grateful that people wanted to work with me. And then obviously I got smarter and scaled and group stuff and all the things.
Yeah. It's so nice to hear. It's just such a beautiful reminder for anybody listening, the 2, 3 months of just putting out content and value without any expectation. It's that long game, the delayed gratification, especially in a time where we get these instant dopamine hits, right? You put a piece of content out and boom, it's whether it gets likes or not, or comments or not, it's you get instant feedback. And I know you just recently wrote a Wall Street best-selling book, which we're going to talk about. I was having a conversation with a girlfriend the other day who wrote a book, and she was saying how that process is delayed gratification because you're just writing every day. There's no instant dopamine. There's no feedback. There's no loop of people liking or not liking it. You're just behind your computer writing and no one really knows what you're doing. And so she talked about how for her, it was just such a, like an ego check to do that type of creative work versus content type of creative work. But at the end of the day, it's just so nice to hear and have that reminder that you put content out for 3 months before you decided to put out an offer. And there are just far too many people who, sign up on Instagram and are like, nobody joined my program. And I'm like, you haven't given anything. Nobody knows about you. There's no awareness. You're not giving content, right? You gotta flex that muscle and really nurture those people and show people what it is you stand for. How has your business evolved from the content you put out then versus now?
Yeah. And also real quick, just touch upon that, just because I think it's really important. Because you and I, we play the long game, like we're in this for the long haul. We want to do a really good job and impact people for years and years to come. I think subconsciously that takes out the resistance that most people create on having to make a buck within 2 months.
Yeah.
Most people do it to make money. And as a result, they're creating such subconscious resistance that they almost fear not making it. And it really sets them back. And so ironically, when you and I play the long game, we end up making money even sooner because there is no resistance, so to speak.
Yeah.
In regards to the content, it's a great question. In the beginning, look, I didn't have a laptop for the first 8 months. I was literally using my phone. I was all in on messy action. I think that's so big. And, people want to talk today about all these things that you need to add for so much more success. I love to talk about what we can let go of. And for me, that's waiting for the right time and needing to be perfect and so forth. And I just put myself out there. And so it was raw. It was a lot of energy. I look back now and I have a good chuckle, but as I like to say, you're not embarrassed with who you were a year ago, you're probably not growing. Right. And so obviously the content right now is a lot more polished and we talk about different things. I still love mindset. People always ask me to talk about personal branding and stuff like that because we've done a good job of it. So I want to give it back and so forth. Just all the things, I guess, a lot of money stuff, energy. I think in regards to spirituality and stuff like that, for me personally, I think that's really the stuff that makes all the difference. So I love to talk about that. That's my jam. But it's all things personal development. That hasn't changed, but I think the quality of the content has significantly gone up.
Yeah, we always say like A grade, if I were to grade you, A grade content starts as C grade, right? Like C grade turns into B grade turns into A grade. I actually remember your first Instagram live. I actually was on it. I remember your very first Instagram live. And I remember you just jumping on. I feel like you were wearing like a white thermal long sleeve shirt. That's just what I remember. Yeah. And just like a white background. And you're like, here we are. Like, I'm doing this thing. I don't know what this is going to turn into. You can come with me for the ride or not. But one of the things that really stood out about you and still does is your consistency. It was like every single day, whether you're doing a live, whether it was daily or weekly or putting the content out or reaching out to people, just so consistent. What would you tell? Because there's what you do and then what you would tell a client to do. What would you tell a client to do who's struggling with, and I really feel like we go so deep on this conversation. It is difficult to be consistent or it is difficult to feel motivated when the external is not coming in, meaning when no one's liking your stuff, when no one's sliding into your DMs, when your launches aren't where you want them to be, it's harder to show up for most people than when money's falling out of the sky, people are sliding into your DMs. That momentum is like much easier. So what do you do, or what would you tell someone who's struggling with the consistency and motivation of showing up when seemingly, quote unquote, nothing is happening on the outside?
Yeah, it's funny because I've interviewed some of the biggest achievers on the planet on the podcast, from Hollywood to athletes to great entrepreneurs, yourself, and everybody in between. And one commonality that I always hear is they all say there's big misconception in regards to high achievers always being motivated. In fact, we're often not motivated. But when that happens, we revert back to our training or our commitment or our consistency or why we started in the first place. And that makes all the difference. So just to be clear, for anyone that's in that rut right now, you're not always going to be motivated. So you better be committed, right? Because in life, you don't get what you want, you get what you're committed to. In regards to consistency, that's a superpower. It's one of mine for sure. But the great news is consistency is a superpower that's available to everybody.
Yeah.
Right. And it boggles my mind how sometimes people they want the instant gratification or they quit or they're not willing to stick it through, when sometimes it's just a matter of showing up, going in the rooms, going live. You never know what's going to happen from there. Just by getting in the arena, something energetically will happen to that because the universe likes that stuff. It's showing trust and surrender and so forth. And then obviously, look, there's the other side of the question where it's like, all right, well, how do I know if what I'm doing isn't working and I need to pivot or refine a little bit? Maybe you do. but let's figure out why it's not sticking. Are you energetically behind what you're doing? Like, you can be consistent every day, but if you're not really passionate about it or you're not into it, that's a frequency too. And people can sniff that out. So you really have to figure out, do I just need to be more consistent and stick this through? Or do I need to maybe change what I'm doing a little bit so I feel a little bit more aligned, because that's contagious.
Yeah. Do you have a practice or like a tool in your toolbox that you can share with us? Maybe you have a few that help you discern that, like sitting with, am I out of alignment? Am I not really fully behind this? Is this an energetic frequency thing, or vice versa, right? Like, is there a way that you figure that out?
Yeah, for me, it's a feeling and it's an energy, and I pay attention to those. Like, if I'm ever off or in a rut, or I'm not feeling good, or I'm in a lowered state or lower vibration, I ask myself why. Sometimes it's who I'm hanging around with, right? And then you have to set boundaries and so forth. It depends what it is.
Yeah.
But ultimately, if you don't really feel like alive and excited about something, it could be a relationship, it could be a business, it could be something that you have to post, whatever the case may be, there's typically a reason why. Maybe it's not really authentic, or maybe it's not you, or maybe you're not really into that, or it's a different season. It's time to change up. So I would pay really close attention to the way that you're feeling and assess it.
Yeah. Yeah. You have become such a significant person of interest. Like I said before, I mean, you've interviewed the biggest names, thought leaders, done lives with them. They've helped with your book launch. There's so many people that's just, it's wild to see who you're connected to. I'd love you to walk me through that process, because I'm assuming back when you were working on Wall Street, you weren't necessarily hanging out with all these massive entrepreneurs and speakers. How have you become such a big person of interest? And then how could someone else replicate that as well?
Yeah, this is so good. This is what I've been getting asked a lot lately.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you and I were talking before we hit record, and you're like, is there anything specific that you're coming out with? And people keep asking me this exact question. So I'm starting to think maybe I should put something like that together, be a little with this. I get asked that all the time. And the truth of the matter is, on Wall Street, I had no connections to these people. I didn't even know who half these people were, if I'm being honest. Like, like someone will be like, I can't believe you got so-and-so on the podcast. I've been following them for 10 years. I literally just found out who they were and became a fan of their work and so forth. I think that's probably better for this case scenario. Ignorance is bliss. In regards to networking and creating relationships, I always love to create win-wins. In other words, like, if I'm going to have somebody big on the podcast, they're very busy. They can't say yes to everyone clearly. What do I have to offer them? And one thing that I put a huge emphasis on when I first started this, in addition to the brand, was community. And there's a big difference between an audience and a community. I think when you think of an audience, think of like vanity and metrics, and a lot of followers are fake and so forth. But a community is a lot more intimate and they're engaging. So for example, maybe we have a community, I'm just giving an example of 1,000, someone else has an audience of 300,000. But if someone comes into our group as a speaker, out of the 1,000, probably 850 are going to buy their book.
Right.
That carries weight and so forth. And then also just like, I think integrity, authenticity, good vibes, and just going the extra mile.
Yeah.
A lot of people reach out to people and they want them on for a specific reason, but it doesn't come across genuine or authentic. And I'm really, really, really big on relationships specifically today. I think they're everything. And to the best of my ability, I always like to put in as much effort as I possibly can. And then you start building a reputation and you start getting credibility. Oh, he's really good at conversations on his podcast, or we went really deep, or he's a great connector and so forth. And that begins to build.
Yeah. So was your process of reaching out to people the same when you had, 300 people in your community, or 0 people in your community, versus now where you have, so many more, or you have that credibility, that clout, that authority, that name, that brand recognition? Was it kind of the same process of just like shoot your shot?
I would say now it's a lot different, because the humblest way to say this is we've, created a credibility or reputation, so to speak. And now most of the people that come on our show are reaching out to us because they're hyping something or they want to promote something. And I'm totally cool with that. In the beginning, it was a lot of persistence and being relentless and so forth. So that's definitely changed, because we got to a place where we have leverage. Now you can take a look, and all that work paid off. And now we have a pipeline, and we have a lot to point to and so forth. So we've definitely got to a place now where a little bit less persistent and so forth, and more, people gravitating towards us.
Yeah. Are you monetizing your podcast?
Yeah.
Are you monetizing it with like commercials and ads, or charging people to come on, or both, or what are you open to sharing?
That's a great question. Yeah, I'm open to sharing everything, if I'm being honest. Sponsors and stuff like that. And just to be clear, the sponsor and the ad has to be 100% in alignment with me.
Yeah.
I will not sell my soul. And I know that a lot of people charge that people on their podcast. One of the reasons that I personally believe, people can disagree, is that one of the reasons our brand has had the success it has is because I've been so intentional and maniacal about who I've collaborated with and why. And so as a result, you can't pay me enough money to be on the podcast if I don't think you're the right fit for me and the audience and the community and so forth. So I've never charged somebody to be on my show because I want to make sure they're in alignment with me.
Yeah.
So I don't charge guests. That's not my thing. But sponsorships and ads, hell yeah.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I mean, integrity is like our absolute number one, just as a human, but then also as a company. Integrity
Yeah.
is our number one core value. And so I couldn't agree more. You know, I
And
can't even imagine backing a brand that I didn't believe in.
I'll give you a quick example. And I'm not going to mention names, of course, but I was at a speaking engagement recently, and one of the speakers at that event had paid to be on that stage, which is totally fine to the event coordinator to each their own. But I'm just being honest. Like when that particular speaker went on, they lost the audience a little bit.
Oh,
And then, because the event coordinator is my friend and I keynoted it and so forth, and he knew it. He's like, I was trying to make ends meet towards the end of the budget was much bigger than I expected. So you always got to assess, like, is it worth it if I'm going to lose some people, or it's going to, maybe inhibit the vibe a little bit.
yeah. What are some trends that you see working right now with your own podcast, or maybe trends going into 2024 as we're wrapping up this year, things that are working really well that our audience could replicate because so many of them have their own podcast?
Yeah, I think it's so important to get intentional in regards to what do you want to project? Like, what do you want the vibe and frequency of your show to be? And we're talking specifically about podcasts right now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, what guests do you want on the show? You can make a list of like reasonable guests that you can get right now, or maybe dream guests and so forth, and work towards that. But what kind of guests do I want, and what do I think my audience would really vibe with right now? And then I would attack those and create your own thing, right? There's so many people with a podcast right now, which is a really good thing because a saturated space just shows that there's a market for it. And sadly, I think the alarming data is that most people quit after, like, I don't know, maybe 4 or 6 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's to each their own. Like you have to really go with your gut on what you want people to hear and so forth. And so for me, it depends on which topics that I'm personally interested in.
Yeah.
Like right now, for example, I'm really big into the spiritual stuff, like the energy and the quantum stuff. That's really exciting to me, and I can tell when people listen to it, it's like aha moment. So of course, right now during this season, I'm really into that. That can change next season.
Have you done Dispenza's retreat yet?
I have not.
Ooh, you gotta go.
I'm not a big Dispenza guy yet.
Yeah.
I'm not so familiar with his work. I know there's people that really love him. I know you do too.
Well, when you say quantum, that's immediately, he teaches quantum physics and stuff. With your podcast, just in your community, because it's different for everybody, are you finding longer episodes, shorter episodes, solo episodes, interview episodes? Like what's working best?
Yeah. I think it depends on what the episode is. Like, for example, if you're a really good guest, I imagine people will listen to that for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Right. But then you can drop a solo episode, which is really intentional. Maybe it's about specific topics that you notice that your community needs support with, almost like a free coaching episode. That could be 15 minutes, bang. That's why I personally like to mix them up. Typically, I would do one main guest episode on Tuesdays, and then Friday I'll drop like a mini bonus episode, which is either like a small snippet from one of my community calls or a small coaching call. We actually have so many episodes in the queue right now that it's insane. That we're starting to drop 2 main ones a week. But typically, I would like to do one with a guest and then one a little bit more about us, the branding and coaching and supporting and stuff like that. This way, you're able to cater to all the audiences.
Yeah. Definitely agree. We shifted this year and now we're doing 3 episodes a week, but it's like a piece of content from within the program, which actually gives people a taste of what it's like to work with you, right? And like really see behind the hood or under the hood, and then like a longer interview and then a solo episode. With your podcast, let's shift gears for a second. One of the things that you talk about a lot, and you've said it even multiple times on this podcast, is this idea of reinvention. You reinvented yourself and you left Wall Street and the company. And interestingly, similarly to us, the company's digital business evolution, because we believe you're always evolving and growing, and you sort of lean into this reinvention. Let's talk about your book. I'm so excited. If you're watching the YouTube, you can see them on the shelf behind you. The reinvention formula, break it down.
Yeah. So for me, and I want to be very clear, I'm trying to reinvent reinvention. And Yeah. People think of reinvention like, oh my God, start over, 50 years old, whatever the case may be. That's not what it is to me. For me, it's finishing and executing on what you've been dying to do. It's been that one thing that you've been putting off forever. And even think a little bit about your story. Like you tried so many different things and you were a teacher and so forth, and you just knew that there was something a little bit more out there.
Yeah.
And then when you finally had that moment, like, screw this, I'm going all in. It wasn't like you totally reinvented yourself. You just finally listened to that tug and said, enough's enough. I'm going to make this work. And you took all your experience with that. It wasn't like you were starting from scratch,
Right.
so to speak. And so when I think of reinvention, that's what I think of. And, you know, I don't know everything, not even close, but done a couple of things really well the last few years. And one of them is reinvented myself, two
Yeah.
totally different lives. And we've had a lot of success over the last 3 years, starting from scratch, right? And so it's a lot about how to reinvent yourself, but it's the 15 years of personal development that I've been studying. It's Kabbalah, it's a law of attraction, it's sales, it's building a brand, it's bouncing off rock bottom, it's the obstacles, it's handling disappointment, it's falling in love with yourself, it's everything in between. And the book is, there's a lot of chapters and they're very bite-sized. It's very easy to consume.
Yeah.
And what some of the feedback that I've been hearing is like, first and foremost, which is my favorite, is this book makes me feel like I can do anything. Anything is attainable. That's obviously the mission, so to speak, but it's very easy to read. Like, yes, we had a major publisher, but I didn't have a ghostwriter. Like, we did the Audible, so you could literally hear me say it. But before that even dropped, everyone's like, I feel like I'm reading this book and it's your voice in my head because it's weird, it's strange, it's me, it's authentic. And it's just all the things, and it covers a little bit of everything. So for anybody that wants to think and play bigger, wants to gain clarity, branding, entrepreneurship, leadership, love, all that stuff, it's all in there for you. That's why I'm passionate about saying it's literally for anybody in some capacity.
Yeah. Just for anyone who even wants to play in the sandbox of possibility where you're like, oh, what would that look like if I were to reinvent, not having to burn the boats, not having to quit your job, not having to, like, divorce your spouse, but it's just, what would that even look like? I'm getting all the feels because behind you, I keep seeing boats pass by on the East River and I'm like missing New York so much. Oh. So one of the things that I love about the book, like you said, it's very step by step, which anybody who's listening to this podcast knows I love tactical. I love step by step, 3 things, 7 ways. Here's a Venn diagram. And that is something that you do in the book that is so wonderful. And you talk a lot about, I want to say, eliminating a negative thought and replacing it with not just a positive thought, but because that's not just like, let me write an affirmation and stick it on my mirror, right? That doesn't work. It's kind of the rewiring that has to happen in the brain to replace a negative thought or a negative thought pattern or a habit, right? A loop with something positive. So I'd love to hear from you sort of how you approach that, because so many people say they try. I'm going to try to stop thinking negative. I'm going to try to stop with the limiting beliefs. I'm going to try to, it's almost toxic positivity, right? Where you're like, it's okay, everything's fine. And you're like, it's not though. So how do you really get under the surface?
Yeah, I think a word that comes to mind is awareness.
Mm.
And that is the simple fact that we weren't born with any of these beliefs or any of these limitations or negative mentalities or anything, because we haven't got beat down by society yet. So somewhere along the lines, we picked them up. And just the simple fact that we know that, now we have a choice. And for me personally, I stayed in Wall Street probably longer than I should have, although I wouldn't have changed a thing because it brought me exactly where I was supposed to be in my journey. But the reason why, Jess, is because I was so invested in this narrative that this was it for me. So Wall Street cat, and make a certain amount of money. I'd never have good relationships. I'd always be strung out. And I was given that so much light.
Great story. Sign me up.
Right. And then the pandemic, the quiet and really connecting, it occurred to me that I had a choice. We all have a choice, and I could totally choose a different narrative. And instead of thinking about, well, what can go wrong? I started doubling down on, well, what can go right? How good can you stand it? What if it does work out? What if you fly? And I started being super intentional. Well, what would those things actually look like? And then I just started being obsessed with attacking those and not worrying about all the limited beliefs and so forth. And the truth is people are further along than other people because the people that are succeeding have an ability to tap into more of their potential. And one of the ways to do that is to remove the limiting beliefs that holds most people back.
Yeah.
And most people have this in their subconscious. It's been there forever. But if you don't go under the hood, like you said earlier, and really dissect that and figure out what the hell it is so you can replace it with something more empowering, then you're going to be stuck forever.
Yeah.
And I'll give your listeners a really fun, cool, tangible exercise, since you said this will drop at the end of November. So we have about a month left of the year, right? Let's say you want to make 2024 the greatest year of your life, which I imagine everybody does. I would encourage you to pause this right now, grab a pen and a journal, and write down your entire vision for 2024, all the things that you'd like to bring to fruition, manifest all the things. So everyone pauses it right now, then they come back. And
Welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back, guys. Hope that was great. Now rip that up, rip it into 100 pieces into smithereens. Now I want you to do it again, but this time let's think even bigger and let's remove the limitations and let's see what we come up with. And then I think people will start to get some clarity on the things that are standing in their way aren't real. They're just limiting beliefs. It's all BS.
Yeah, I love this exercise because the idea of ripping it up and doing it again, you start to see what is laying there subconsciously. Because when we write our dreams down and our goals, we limit them. We're actually not dreaming as big as we want because the logical brain kicks in as you're writing that crazy, stupid idea down, as we call it. It's like, that can't really happen. You don't have the certification for that. You don't have enough followers. They're not going to love you, whatever it would be. And so you actually limit the goal that you're writing. You said before that you see a difference between vision and dream, and it's not the same thing. So can you just kind of unpack that?
I think a dream is very vague, right? I think everybody has dreams like, oh, I want to be in the NFL, or I want to be a super entrepreneur. I want to write a best-selling book. For me personally, when I think of a vision, I think of very specifically, like, what's it going to take to get there? What does it look like? And then reverse engineering it. Okay, forget about going from A to Z. Let's say Z is the vision. How do we actually go from A to B? And then continue to compound and build off of that. And so for me, it gives me more of a roadmap and more of a path, where I think a dream is just, it's a little bit too fluffy and vague.
Yeah. I love that. I always say you can't Pinterest your way to your, perfect life either. And that's why I personally don't believe in vision boards. Like I hear you on the dream and the vision, right? But when people create vision boards, a lot of times they go into a random magazine and they cut out random pictures and they glue it to a, page. And that's great. But for me, I'm like, no. You want to create an action board where you're driving action and reverse engineering. Yes. So go on Google the specific thing that you want, print it, cut it out, and then put it on your page. Because if you just open a random magazine, how is that going to be something that you want, or that you want to create? Chances are it's just like, oh, that's cute. It's in this magazine.
A word that comes to mind there is be more intentional.
Intention. Yeah, that's what we're going to do this year. We're going to create intention boards. I like it. That's a good one. Yeah, that is a good one. I've called them action boards for the last 9 years, but I think they just got an upgrade. So thank you for that. All right, let's talk about the book writing process. Was a book something that you always wanted to do, or was this something that someone came knocking on your door and was like, dude, you got to write a book?
So I never thought about writing a book until I reinvented myself. And then when I put together that vision of the 10-lane highway, one of the lanes was a book deal. And for me personally, I didn't want to self-publish my first book because my thought process was, if I'm affiliated with a major publishing house, it's a little bit more credible. I pictured it like a movie coming out backed by a big studio, as opposed to an independent film. Doesn't mean I'm right or wrong. It's just how I felt. And so I put it out there, and then I divorced from it, and I just kept building, and then manifested it. And then Wiley, our publisher, ended up coming to us, and I renegotiated a really big offer. I wasn't afraid to lose the deal. And like, okay, you have a lot of momentum right now. Let's do this. But here's the one caveat. We have a very tight turnaround. And they gave me like maybe, I don't know, 4 months to write 50,000 words.
Write the whole book?
Yeah. Maybe it was a little longer. I don't remember.
Had you had the outline yet?
No, I didn't have a manuscript or a lit agent. I just put it out there and then divorced. And it was literally just building. And then they came to me and it felt good. I wasn't afraid to lose it, but Wiley is a very credible name and so forth. And so just the contract, everything felt good about it. And they're like, all right, so we want this out by this date. And I'll never forget, I went to the New York City Library one day and I wrote for a few hours. It's like, oh, probably wrote 3/4 of this book, done. Yeah. Came home and my fiance is like, not so fast. Let's transfer that to a Word doc. And we did a word count. It was like maybe like 1,800 words out of 50,000. I'm like, oh God, I'm going to come up with a process or a system here. And so I'll never forget December 2022, last year. I woke up every single day at 4 a.m., a little bit earlier than usual. It's pitch blackout, just me and this view. And I would write for about an hour, hour and a half a day. That's it. And it will come out to about 1,000, 1,500 words a day. And the one promise that I made to myself is I would never reread it. Because like you, I'm a recovering perfectionist. And I knew if I did that, I'd never get to page 10.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a big month-long brain dump. And I'm like, all right, we'll give it back to them. They'll come back with some edits and we'll go from there. But at least I'll have something. And I just started writing it and it just flowed out of me. And it was a good order. And I probably could have wrote more, if I'm being honest. And if and when there's a second book, I could duplicate that process. So long-winded answer, it was simple for me, not easy, but simple. 1 month committing to waking up every day at 4 and writing for an hour, and the book wrote itself.
Do you think there's a second on the horizon?
It's funny because I imagine you'll write a book if you're not already at some point.
Yep.
And one thing that you will learn is that writing the book is actually the easy part. And promoting the book and spreading the message is a full-time job in itself. And a lot of my friends had told me that, but maybe I even underestimated it. I mean, it takes everything, and you're running a business, and you're married, and so forth. So it's a lot. So right now, I'm not thinking about book number 2, and also I don't want to diminish this book. I'm really proud. I wrote, my mindset for that book was, I don't know if there'll ever be a book 2. I'm giving this thing every single thing I got. And I'm really confident that the content in there will be timeless. In other words, like someone could pick this book up 100 years from now and the material will still be relevant in some capacity. Yeah. So I'm not really thinking about book number 2, although I did get a download like during the marathon, maybe 3 days ago, on a potential concept for a second book, but I'm not even thinking about it right now. I'm enjoying this one. And I just want to continue to spread the message of this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I've shared on the podcast before because I have always wanted to write a book. I've always wanted to write multiple books. And one of the things that holds me back, which is a story, I can go through this limiting belief and unpack it, but it's what you said with it being timeless. I fear that I'm just constantly evolving, as we all are. And so I'm like, but what I write today, like I might want to change in 6 months. And it's like, but then it's in this book and it lives, and I might feel differently about it. And I just think about even the ways that I teach business, right, and marketing, and it's evolved and changed so many times over the years where I'm like, yeah, but that might not be true anymore. But it's like, that's not a reason to not put it out, right? And in fact, that's a reason to then you can have an addendum or write a second book to it or whatever that might be. But
also that's a guarantee, is that we're always changing and evolving. Yeah. And so it doesn't mean that it discredits some of the content from there. That's where you were at that time, which helped a lot of people. And you might be at somewhere different down the line. You can drop something different. Yeah, absolutely. I think the first book I'll probably write, though, is actually going to be a children's book instead of like a business entrepreneurial book. Yeah. I could feel that. That's awesome. Yeah. It's been a long time coming for me, for sure. Okay. What are some of the things that you would do differently if you were to launch a book again? Because there are so many parts, right? You could do a book launch tour, you can have affiliates, you do all these things when you launch your book, and you were with a publishing company, which is really nice. What are something maybe that you didn't think of, some things that you wish you did, or some things that you would tell people listening? Because so many of our audience members are writing books. Make sure you do this one thing. Yeah, I'll give you guys the blueprint right now. Oh, okay. Yeah. So first of all, I think there's 3 big things that you want to focus on in regards to pre-sales and, creating a buzz beforehand, which is very important for the author. Number 1 is I would create like a launch team or a street team, if you will, your ambassadors, your champions that will pre-order the book and go to bat for you and spread the message. It's very important. Number 2 is bulk orders. And that is there anybody in your community network or anyone that can benefit from buying more than one? Do they have a team? Do they have employees? Do they have loved ones that they might want to share the message with? Make a list of those and then attack that list and see what we can come up with. So we got the street team or the launch team, and then the bulk orders. And then the third one is, nowadays with social media, is a podcast and Instagram live tour. And just reach out to your network. I don't like asking for favors. It's a limiting belief of mine. I'm working on it. It's probably a flaw. I just don't like to ask for things. I just like to deliver. But I asked my network and so forth when I launched my book, and I had done a very good job of building relationships and a great network and so forth. And I went back to them, and everybody showed up and went to bat. It was really the most beautiful thing, if I'm being honest. Yeah. That was the biggest takeaway from week 1, is how many people showed up. And so the third lane would be podcasts and IG lives. I even see like Arnold Schwarzenegger just launched a book. He's obviously mainstream. Even him, this day and age, is going on more podcasts than he is TV segments. It just goes to show you where we're at right now. Yeah. Is play a big role. So those three things, and I'll reinforce them, is the launch team, the bulk orders, and then an IG live and podcast order. And that's a 6-figure strategy right there on the house.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
It's crazy coming up to our hour already. And I'm like, I haven't even tapped into half the things I want to talk about. Let's shift gears yet again. You have an incredible membership. So you give out so many different things for free content. You've got free trainings. I mean, we'll drop the link to your just main website because you have so many goodies on there, but you also have a massive membership where people can stay plugged into you and into your community. So just tell us about your membership.
Yeah. Thank you. So we have 600 people in there, about, give or take, today, and we meet 3 Wednesdays a month, and it's all strategies, tactics, mindset, entrepreneurship, branding, sales, book, all that stuff. And we have a private group and chat where everybody's networking and supporting each other. I believe this is the season of collaboration, not compete. And I want everybody to win and just help each other. And that's what I take most pride in. We also have really big speakers come in once a month too, that you get access to. Even literally a half hour before this call, we just had John Asseroff on from the Secret. It was great. Everybody gets to get access to them, and everybody just helping each other, supporting each other, all the strategies and so forth, and community. So it's one of the things that I'm most proud of right now, is because I do so many other things like one-on-one coaching and mastermind and speaking. When I created this, I wanted to be more of a no-brainer, so a little more affordable, and really take pride in over-delivering and so forth. And community is everything right now.
Yeah. And is that for anybody or just entrepreneurs?
It's for anybody, I would say, because personal development is for anybody. But there are a lot of things, entrepreneurship and business and so forth. But even if you're just looking to improve your mindset, remove limiting beliefs, elevate from other people's frequencies, make relationships, it's all in there for you.
Yeah. What else do you have going on right now, or as we step into 2024, that you're excited about, that our listeners should know about? Maybe offers that you have, other programs? Just pimp yourself out. Tell us everything.
Pimp yourself out.
Go ahead.
It's funny because I'm speaking a lot right now. I'm being a lot more selective where I speak, but I love that. I love the energy of a live crowd and so forth. We have the membership. Obviously, we launch masterminds like every 3 or 4 months, but it's not consistent like your programs. It's a little bit like what I'm feeling at the moment. Then obviously the community. You know, it's interesting. After 3 years, when I told you oftentimes in this conversation about that, like vision board, the 10-lane highway, we kind of completed a 3-year story arc. And I say very humbly, like we hit a lot of the goals that we set. And now it's really time for me to take a second and get quiet and really think about what is that next level of expansion.
Yeah.
Right? Because what got us here is now what's going to get us there. And also I'm changing in regards to what I'm most excited in. So we have those things that I just mentioned, but also I'm taking a minute to really think about, what do I really want to sink my teeth into? What really is going to excite me? And how do we really get to that next level? So more to come. And if I'm being honest, I'm still looking for some clarity on that, but it's coming soon.
Yeah. It's interesting because the last question that we ask every single person on the show has to do with our evolution and why we named the company that. And right, your business is a reflection of you and you're always growing, yada, yada, yada. And I always say, so what is your next personal or business evolution? And it sounds like you're in a similar place that I am actually right now, where I'm like, I'm not 100% clear and I don't want to put words in your mouth. And if you are clear, let us know what your next evolution is, business or personal. But I know for me, some of my own, similarly, you know, our definition of success changes as we get older, our definition of done changes, our definition of fill in the blank, right? And so for me, I am definitely in a season where it's time to put my life really, truly first. I always want to be building my business around my life, never my life around my business. And that's why I'm such a huge advocate for strategies and automation and team and delegation. And we really do practice what we preach, and we've built this machine, but the business still has always been in the forefront of, you know, if I'm not doing anything, then I'll probably work on the business. And there's been a huge shift for me recently, and Mike as well, where our focus just is shifting a little. And it's not, we're not stepping away from the business. We're just we're reinventing how we are looking at the business, and we're reinventing what we want our life to look like and ready to step into a new chapter. So I don't know if you have any clarity at all, or if you're just kind of like, I don't really know.
Yeah. First of all, I think it's really beautiful and good for you guys. And that's how life is. It's different season, different priorities and so forth. And you're right. Like, people often say, what is your definition of success? It really does depend on the season. Right. And I love to hear your answer. For me right now, one thing that comes to mind, and it's not only this, but a specific word that comes to mind is peace. Like, be in alignment and at peace with the different things that you have going on. If it doesn't feel good, then that's something to reassess and so forth. And so I have a lot of peace right now, which is great. But I also know that we can't just keep doing what we're doing. There's got to be an evolution or a reinvention, so to speak. So I'm in that process right now of kind of like going through that portal to the
Yeah.
next song, figuring out what that clarity is. I'm super pumped to kind of receive the downloads on what it is. I think we're getting closer, but I think this is the exciting time.
Yeah. I'm stoked that you just said the word portal, because my next question had to do with that. We're birthday twins. I think we're a day apart or 2 days apart. April
That's
babies,
right.
right? You're a Taurus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
April 27th.
You're the 27th?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the 28th. Yep, I knew it. I knew we were like a day apart. I just didn't know which direction. You did a post back during our birthdays and you were talking about basically, people always do like 38 lessons in 38 years or whatever. And one of the nuggets, I think you called it, was your pain is your portal. And I wanted to just ask you about that. What do you mean about that? How do you see that?
Yeah, for anybody that's going through it right now, and when I say it, like that rut or that pain or that season, that's a necessity for all the expansion on the other side. And I know that's tough sometimes when you're going through it, but if you have that mentality, like whatever I'm going through right now is going to lead to all that other growth and expansion, then it won't hurt so bad when you're going through it. But it is a necessity because you have to shed old skins and identities. And to be honest with you, like I'm not the same cat I was 3 months ago. I imagine too, like that's how rapidly we're growing and evolving and so forth. And so pain is the portal. On the other side of the painful season is where all the real growth and expansion lies.
Yeah. Would you equate stuckness and lacking clarity to pain as well? Because I feel like sometimes that season of not knowing could feel painful as opposed to, and clearly going through something that is painful. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And it's a beautiful question because I'm in it.
Yeah.
And I'm not in pain. I'm
Okay.
actually excited and I'm patient with the process. I'm relentlessly pursuing, but I'm also patient with the downloads. And I think the downloads come when you're able to really elevate your frequency, because then you can draw upon the divine inspiration, which is that one idea that changes everything. And you can't really draw upon that when you're in a rut or you're feeling negged out or you're frustrated. Right. So you want to get in good frequencies to the best of your ability, whether it's gratitude or personal development or being with loved ones or finding some sort of state of joy. When you're in that long enough, something great's going to come from it. So for example, for me, I'm a student right now and I'm taking a Kabbalah class on Wednesday nights here in New York City. It's great. Awesome. Just another tool in my toolkit for personal development, but it's awesome. Every time I leave there, I'm like high on life. I get all these creative ideas and so forth. And so that's one thing that I'm doing to put myself in a situation to be available for that divine inspiration. For someone else listening, might be something else.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't equate lack of clarity to pain by any means, because I think this is part of the process. It's good that you're not rushing it.
Yeah, but I would just have to publicly edify you because that just shows how much growth and work you've done on yourself. Because while lacking clarity might not feel like pain to you, and you're like, no, I see that as opportunity. It's exciting, right? The way that I see it for so many people is lacking clarity equals uncertainty, and uncertainty equals lack of control. And there's fear there, right? When we don't know what is next, for a lot of people, that is the pain. And so it might not be hurting pain, like, oh, stop pushing that hurts, but it's like discomfort in the unknown. So I just want to edify you in the fact that you see the unknown as opportunity. And that just shows how much of the mindset work you have done over the years.
Yeah. And also clarity can mean different things to different people in different seasons.
Yeah.
Right. So for me and you, it's like that next level of expansion. But for someone else listening, for being responsible, they might be like, I just want to get to step one. Those people, I would say clarity follows action. You got to get in the damn arena, as you love to say, throw some spaghetti at the wall and try new things. And if it's not the thing, it'll most likely be the thing that leads to the thing, but you'll never know unless you get inside the arena.
Yeah. Craig Siegel, before we get into some rapid fire questions to tie a bow on this, where can people find you? I know we told them about some of the cool stuff you have going on, but where can they find you, your podcast, your Instagram? Tell us everything.
Yeah. On social media at Craig Siegel _CLS. Anywhere you buy books, the Reinvention Formula, anywhere you listen to podcasts, the CLS Experience. If you love inspirational nuggets throughout the week, you could text us at 917-634-3796. Text the word Jess so I know you heard it here. And come say hello. I love to interact to the best of my ability, and come say hi. Yeah. And we'll drop that phone number in. So in case you missed it, I want to do something really fun before we get into rapid fire. So I'm feeling like fun.
It's a giveaway time. Like, why not? So I am going to buy 5 books, and I would love to give 5 of the Reinvention Formula books written by the one and only Craig Siegel out to our listeners. So if you're one of the first 5 people to screenshot this episode, share it out on social media, tell us what some of your takeaways were, your biggest aha, just something that you loved. But here's the thing, you got to tag Craig at Craig Siegel _CLS. And you got to tag me at I am Jessica DeRose. The first 5 people that do that, I am going to mail you a copy of Craig's book. Cool?
I love it. Game
Cool.
on.
Love it. All right, a couple rapid fire. Some are easier than others. You ready?
Love a challenge.
Favorite movie?
The Dark Knight Rises.
Wow, that was one of the ones I had in my head for you.
Really?
Yeah, it was that in Shawshank. I don't know why.
It's a good one too. It's a good one too. But not my favorite, but a good one.
Yeah. Okay. What do people get wrong about you?
They think I'm an extrovert.
If you were to give a TED Talk on something that you're not known for, what would it be on?
Resilience.
Okay. I like it. Guilty pleasure.
WWE wrestling.
Really?
Yeah, love it.
Wow.
Ever since I was a kid. Now I have my fiance into it. It's great.
That's so funny. Last meal on earth.
Cheeseburger.
Okay. How do you want it cooked?
Medium rare.
People say new levels, new devils. What are you currently struggling with or challenged by?
So if I'm being honest, right now we're scaling and we're growing rapidly, and I'm building a team.
Yeah.
And it's challenging to find the great chess pieces to surround you on the chessboard. I'm working through it. I'm optimistic, but that's something that came to mind.
Yeah, it is. It's something that is just not talked about enough. And it is also interesting to step into a leadership role, not where you're leading an audience or a community, but when you're leading a team. It's 2 completely different things.
100%.
Yeah. $50,000 question. We ask everybody this. If I were to cut you a check for $50K that you had to use in or on your business tomorrow, you can split it up or use it in one lump sum. How would you spend it?
On the business?
Yeah. He's like, fireworks at the wedding.
You know what? We haven't done ads yet.
Okay.
Been very organic and everything kind of, me up until this point. That's something that I'm curious about leaning into.
Yeah.
So that'd be a good place to start.
Cool. I love it. And it's just, again, a testament to what you've built. It's absolutely incredible. Craig Siegel, I adore you. Thank you so much for being here. I just love you so much.
I feel
It's
the same
incredible
way.
what you've built.
It's awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Don't forget, check all the links in our show notes. We've got everything for you there. If you love this episode, make sure you are tagging it, screenshotting it, and tagging Craig and I both. And the first 5 people who do that, we will be sending out copies of the Reinvention formula for you. And if that is not you, then please head over to the link that we have in our bio so you can go snag a copy on Amazon. It's on Kindle. He's got audio versions. Make sure you're following along. He is interviewing the best people in the industry. And I'm just super grateful that he spent time with us today. So Craig, thank you.
Thank you, Jess.
As always, friends, cheers to your evolution. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you loved this episode, I invite you to be a part of our ripple effect and share it with a friend. And please, if you feel called, take 30 seconds to leave a 5-star review, and I'll be forever grateful. Until next time, cheers to your evolution.